Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Thomas, we haven't been on the air for a while, and we've had a lot of Trump tweets. And so today, to get us started again, would you please just give us an overview of what you see has happened in the last few weeks while you were on vacation?
Well, Betsy, it's been an amazing time. And what we're seeing is Trump is Santa Claus. But in the true tradition of Santa Claus, the Dutch Bishop Klaus was a very clever man, just like Trump is. And he was famous because his town, seeing that there could be hard times coming, saved up a lot of their fruits, their vegetables, their nuts, particularly their nuts, and they held them back in a storehouse, in a reserve, as well as some gold that he would then give out to people to help. But when other countries then and other cities around him said, "Can you help us?" he said, "Yeah." And so he would leave them. They would actually paint the nuts gold, and they would nuts and fruits, and they leave them in shoes, right? But the other tradition is Krampus, and Krampus is like Santa Claus has a helper, sometimes called Rupert Krampus, and he has a switch. And he goes around, and whenever someone has done something bad, instead of getting the good things that President Trump Santa Claus Trump, instead of giving them rewards, Rupert would go around and switch them and pinch them and chase them and bite them and hurt them. Well, that's what's going on. And so we're going to go down the list of who's been naughty and who's been nice, who's got presents under the tree, and who doesn't have any presents under the tree. So let's get started. Mad Dog Mattis. He ain't getting nothing. As a matter of fact, he is going to be chased by Krampus all the way to town and back. Why? Let's remember who Mad Dog Mattis is. Trump elected the most ferocious of military leaders, a guy who says that his job is to make sure that nobody else in the world sleeps at night comfortably. And what did Mad Dog Mattis show us? This is the court of public opinion. And when people think that Trump isn't doing something, you need to understand that his tweets and him bringing it to light, him bringing it to the public attention, is all that it takes. Mad Dog Mattis, he's gone. He's history. We'll talk about Kelly in a minute along with him. But the point is, Mad Dog Mattis has now been shown to be the very person who was giving $1 billion a year to ISIL in Syria. Oh, now what's Trump going to do? He basically has sat down with a couple counselors. He does not need the Joint Chief of Staff. He does not need the military. He does not need Mad Dog Mattis. He gave all of them an opportunity. And what did they do? Nothing except show that they are on the opposite side of America. And this is what is really disturbing. We now need to determine who are Americans and who are not Americans. And we've been calling Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton the worst communists, basically, Chinese communists, Russian communists. Number one, there's only one person in history that even compares to them, and that's Harry Dexter White, who basically created the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, as a Russian spy. Bretton Woods Agreement, that was all him, Harry Dexter White. What do we find out later? 100% a Russian spy, a communist. Well, that's what Mad Dog Mattis is. That's what Dunford is. That's what Kelly is. Every one of these globalists, including Lindsey Graham, including anyone who doesn't believe we should have a secure southern border, is an enemy of America.
So basically you're saying that anyone in the Senate right now who does not give Trump this border wall money is not truly looking after America.
That is correct. And my suggestion is very, very, very simple. They all take a vow to uphold the law. They are not upholding the law. And therefore they should be asked to sign a document stating that they will uphold the law, which is the president has the right to secure our borders. If the Senate doesn't want to give him the money it takes to do so, then they are enemies of the state. and they need to sign a document stating that they are either for America or they're communists, they're globalists, they're warmongers.
Their actions speak who they are. I don't need any more documents to be signed.
Like John Roberts. John Roberts now saying that we need to bring back the people we sent back who were asylum seekers, who weren't asylum seekers. That's just showing who he is. That's like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Okay, this shows the politicalization of our system. All of those people have taken vows to uphold the laws of America, and they are breaking them, and therefore they got to go. John Roberts, just get out. We need to be able to assess whether people are doing a good job. Take Mad Dog Mattis. Mad Dog Mattis had 4 different funded groups in Syria promoting the civil war. Okay? How could that possibly be? At one point, all 4 of them were fighting outside of Idlib each other. And then when they all retreated, all 4 of the factions were using U.S. weapons. In other words, U.S. Pentagon-funded ISIL, ISIS, al-Nusra, and other groups. So, Mad Dog Mattis, you had your chance. You said you were going to kill ISIS. Oh no, what are you doing now? Oh, now Mad Dog Mattis wants to say, there's a new ISIS, and it's in Afghanistan, and we're going to call it ISIS-K. In other words, he just made this up. In other words, that would be another group that he's funding against the president's wishes. Remember, many black operations, off-book accounting happened through the Pentagon without the president's permission. Why? Because they are continuing the policies of Obama. Obama wanted civil war in Syria, and he got it. He wanted total confusion in North Korea. He got it. He wanted to have a war with 100,000 of our troops putting their lives on the line in Afghanistan to protect the poppy fields, to protect the heroin flow from the rogue CIA. Really? We're going to allow that to happen? No, Trump is not allowing that to happen. So sorry, Mad Dog Mattis, you're out. And there is no such thing as ISIS-K in Afghanistan. We created ISIS. We created Al-Qaeda. Well, we created Al-Qaeda specifically in Afghanistan, but we supported ISIL. Remember when Obama refused to call it ISIS because he called it ISIL? That's because he was funding ISIL. He wants there to be a league in Syria that basically turns it into a civil war that starts Armageddon. That was his intent. He did everything he could. Had it not been for the Russians stepping in and saying to Obama, I'm going to spit in your face, which is what happened. We're going to show you that you never once bombed a single ISIS encampment in Syria, ever. You never once bombed their oil pipelines, ever. Who did you bomb, Obama? You bombed 7 countries. None of them were at war with. None of them had congressional approval. And Mr. Obama, you, sir, should have Krampus chasing you all about town, pinching you and swatting you with a switch, because you are not an American. You are a war actor. You are just like Hillary Clinton. You are a communist, a Russian communist, a Chinese communist, and a global communist. And that goes for what's happening in the European Union too. So goodbye, Mad Dog Mattis. You had your chance, and what you did is you showed everybody that you're fighting against America. Goodbye. How about General Kelly? Well, remember, the weakest chief of staff in American history, Reince Priebus, had to be replaced by somebody with some spine, somebody with at least some discipline, and that was, of course, Kelly. But Kelly came along with his girlfriend, Kirstjen Nielsen, the head of Homeland Security. How is it that anybody can say, I'll only take this position if my girlfriend gets this high position that I'm going to appoint her to? They're both criminals. Kelly's a criminal, and Kirstjen Nielsen is a criminal. Why? Because ask them to sign a document stating that they support the president in his war on the southern border. The number one problem we have in America is our attack on the southern border, and that's one of the reasons Trump is pulling troops back from Afghanistan, from Syria, and from all over the world. He promised us that he is not going to be in these wars. They're not our wars. We're not going to pay billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to protect poppy fields for the heroin in Afghanistan, for the emeralds that we were trading weapons for with Al-Qaeda. I mean, this is absolutely absurd. You cannot win a civil war in Afghanistan. That has been proven. No one can. No one can win a war in Syria, a civil war. Cannot happen. Will not happen. Why? Because that was the design. The design was that it never, ever be resolved. This is simply a money-making machine. And we've pointed out who the industrial military complex are, the members who have all these asset management groups. It's the same bankers, it's the same brokers, it's the same globalists, it's the Lindsey Grahams, it's the supposedly dead John McCain, it's the James Wolfe, head of security for the Senate, who basically revealed thousands and thousands of leaks to the prostitute Allie Watkins. And what happens? Nothing. Nothing happens. Same thing with a variety of these leakers. Every leak is a 5-year sentence. Thousands of leaks. James Wolfe. So what do we get? A plea deal. I am so sick of plea deals. Plea deals mean there is no justice in America. There is fake justice. There is no justice if you can give plea deals to criminals. Especially when you take someone like a Michael Cohen, who is such a criminal. I thought everyone in the world knew that he was the worst criminal in New York City. He owns more taxi medallions that he has cheated on with taxes. He's a real estate mogul who is the number one cheater. One of the worst lawyers in history. He records his own clients and uses it against them, creates non-disclosement agreements with prostitutes in the name of Trump, and then we find out, there was no non-disclosure agreement. As a matter of fact, that was Stormy Daniels was being paid directly by David Brock and Media Matters. So when we want to look at the criminals, sorry, Kelly, General Kelly, you're a criminal. And unfortunately, many of our generals are criminals. They know full well that the enemy we're fighting, we support, we pay, and we have no intention of winning that war. It's just like with North Korea. North Korea, what is happening there? We're going to have a president who for Christmas is going to say, peace in North Korea, peace in Tibet, peace in Taiwan, peace in South Korea, peace in, or at least we're not going to be fighting, in Syria, in Afghanistan, in all of these places where it is nothing more than an economic equation, period. And these generals must keep the money flowing. Now, Trump was a genius with the omnibus budget. He got a 2-year approval because why? In the past, this is the way that it works. At Christmas time, Obama, for 8 years in a row, and every president before him, passes the NDAA, which is always passed so that we can fund the military at the last minute, at the absolute last minute at Christmas, and the story is always the same. We must pass this budget, which we've attached jillions of garbage bills and addendums to and additions to, so that every single senator and every single member of the House gets their own pork belly personal concerns for their own constituency. Okay, what is that? That's called selling out America for the sake of money. And in most cases, it's the lobbyists that are actually paying them to do this. So, when you want to talk about the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, Obama, every year, right down to Christmas, well, it looks like we can't pay the soldiers The soldiers are going to go without Christmas dinner. Oh my gosh. We have to pass the NDAA no matter what. We can't question it. And we're going to add jillions and jillions of dollars to it because it snuck through at the last minute. Well, Trump took care of that. He got a 2-year omnibus budget. Now he can close down the government. Why? 4.5 million people work for the federal government. How many need to work for the federal government? Certainly no more than a couple million. Our military needs to be protecting our southern border, not countries around the world. When you look at the waste in the federal government, the last time that we closed things down, nothing changed. 37,000 people did not come back to their jobs, and we didn't miss a single one of them.
Well, does this mean that the senior executive service employees are on furlough?
Well, yes, because they are non-essential. And they've never been essential, but they're in charge. So the senior executive service members, he created with the omnibus budget the possibility that he could use the Holman Clause, which can pay the SES members $1 a year if he
but nothing's happening with that. And these people are literally the enemy. They work for the globalists. They're running like a separate operation. It's sort of like these things that we're reading about now with this Gladio operation. These armies that are left behind. They're an infiltrated bureaucratic army that not only obstructs the president and what he wants to do, but they create havoc in America.
You cannot be more of a communist than a senior executive service member because you actually take a vow to a paramilitary organization that is outside of the bounds of the executive branch. So in other words, the president is supposed to be in charge of the SES members who are appointed, 10,000 of them. Obama appointed over 8,000 of them himself. They're Obama hangovers. What do? Nothing. None of them are essential. Not a single one of them. And this is what's going to happen. Trump is saying, let it be closed for a long time. Why? Last time it was only closed for a short time. 37,000 people lost their jobs because we found out they didn't do anything. And what we're going to find out this time is hundreds of thousands of people could lose their job because if it goes months and months and we don't have anybody doing their job and we notice that they're not essential, for instance, Homeland Security, Kristen Nielsen, hit the road, babe. You do not support a secure southern border. In other words, you are part of the attack on America. And mind you, people don't want to talk about this. We're not just talking about human trafficking. We're not talking about fentanyl. We're not talking about drugs that you take one pill and it kills you. And they just have confiscated in just the last few months enough of those pills to kill every single person in America. Those are being created by Chinese pharmaceutical companies, American pharmaceutical companies, and then you have child trafficking. You have the murders. How many murders are happening on our southern border today? More than you can count. How many mass graves are we going to find this week? Nobody knows. We find them every single week. But what's worse than that, and that's the reason Trump just passed an executive order, and that executive order is very critical because nobody seems to be noticing it. And this is what he's going to use next. How many dirty bombs can come across the southern border? An infinite amount. Because why? Mad Dog Mattis and Kelly and Nielsen and all the other people in the Senate and the House who do not support a strong southern border, who absolutely will not stop the war in our southern border, they're our enemies. And they simply need to sign a document that states that they will reinforce their commitment to follow the law. And when they don't follow the law, like John Roberts, or they make up law, this as the Supreme Court does, they are supposed to be interpreting law. Nope, they don't interpret law. They make up law. And then you have somebody like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who literally has not written anything in years. She sleeps through every meeting. I don't even know if she knows her own name. And then she comes out and lies and says she's completely healthy, and now we find out she's got malignant cancer all over her body and she won't step down. This is the evil that we have to get people to sign an affidavit stating that they are going to follow the law. And if they are not going to follow the law, they need to get out, period.
Well, she is the epitome of what a globalist puppet is, but they use her to push their laws and interpretation of laws.
Absolutely. And when you know what someone's going to vote in the Supreme Court before they vote, they should be kicked off the Supreme Court, because that means that they are partisan, they are not unbiased, they are very biased, they are politicized, and they are an enemy of the state.
Well, I mean, really, people don't expect a lot from this Kavanaugh guy. We told you from the very beginning, he's a senior executive service operative. So don't be surprised when he swings left along with the very corrupt globalist John Roberts.
Now, Santa Claus has elves to help him, and Trump has a few elves to help him, but he doesn't need any. He is the president. He controls 4.5 million federal employees. They all must obey his orders. Seems as if Washington, D.C., the District of Crime, doesn't seem to know this. They have all signed off on a document stating, yeah, we're going to follow the law if we like it, and if we don't, we won't. And if our political bosses tell us what to do, then we're just simply going to do it. We need the shutdown. For instance, Pelosi swore there weren't the votes to get the wall, $5.7 billion passed in the House. It passed easily. Now the criminal Republicans in the Senate, if they do not pass the bill to secure the southern border, y'all need to vote them out of office, and we need to make them sign an oath of allegiance to follow the law, because they're not following the law. And when you got a Schumer or you got a Mitch McConnell who says he's not going to basically support this, then he is saying very clearly that he is a globalist, communist, war actor, a non-American, and as we know, he is a Chinese spy along with his wife. And we know this. We know that he's been paid off again and again and again. We know John McCain was paid off by the Russians. We know John McCain was paid off by the Chinese. We know that there was never a single war that John McCain didn't support. And now Lindsey Graham has stepped forward to be the voice of the war hawk, John McCain, from the grave, to basically say the stupidest things that anyone could ever say in terms of world political government and the world political scene. For Lindsey Graham to say that if we pull troops out of Afghanistan means we then could incur another 9/11 and we could go backwards and we could have it happen again. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Who created 9/11? That would be Dick Cheney, George H.W. Bush, Baby Bush, Condoleezza Rice, and don't forget the most important person of all who covered up the entire thing, who was in charge of the FBI, Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller was one of the major architects of 9/11. That's the reason he's there, trying to protect the Democrats so that it is not known their part in all of this.
No, he's running a coup d'etat against the president and trying to overthrow President Trump and overrun America. This is what the senior executive service, Mueller is one, is doing.
And John Brennan became the head of the CIA terrorist division. And before that, he was in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, where he was radicalized, and he became a radical fundamentalist Muslim. He is a terrorist, pure and simple. He signed the visas, the expedited visas that James Baker created a special office for expediting visas in Saudi Arabia in the House of Saud. In other words, George H.W. Bush, when he was no longer president, went and lived more than 50% of the time with the king of Saudi Arabia, who was responsible, a huge part responsible for 9/11. That much we know. And so, who created 9/11? Sorry, Lindsey Graham, it has nothing to do with Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, we created Al-Qaeda, and we tried to blame 9/11 on Al-Qaeda. Complete nonsense. We created Al-Qaeda to fight the Russians in Afghanistan, and so that the rogue CIA could protect their opium fields and their emeralds. I mean, this is so blatantly disgusting that we have Americans parading as people, domestic people parading as Americans. They're not. They're not. Donald Rumsfeld is anything but an American. He is, again, a radical Islamic terrorist. He created Al-Qaeda. We have pictures with his arm around not only Saddam Hussein, but also Osama bin Laden. We paid them. Donald Rumsfeld paid them, trained them. The name Al-Qaeda means the camp or the list of CIA operatives being trained by Donald Rumsfeld. We need to see these enemies for what they are.
I mean, you have the CIA and the Pentagon fighting each other.
Oh, yeah, and look in Syria. 4 different factions of the Pentagon all fighting each other. How can that even be possible? Well known. Trump came in and he goes, hey, what's going on? Why are we giving $1 billion a year to ISIS in Syria? Okay, anyone who did that would be Obama, Hillary, that would be John Kerry and Loretta Lynch and the whole State Department and John Brennan and James Comey and Robert Mueller. They all are enemies of America. And we just need to focus on one little teensy tiny thing. Either you support a secure southern border or you are letting weapons of mass destruction enter this country. That's the part no one wants to mention. Now, why is Kirstjen Nielsen, why is she out? Because for quite some time she was, along with Leslie Ireland, was the representative who made a report. The number one intelligence report made to the president every single day was on weapons of mass destruction. How come we haven't heard a word about a dirty bomb coming across our southern border? How come we haven't heard anything being done about the perpetrators of 9/11? James Comey, Robert Mueller, John Brennan, are you going to do any research? Did the commission on 9/11 look at any evidence? No. Did the now exposed 20-some pages which demonstrate that Saudi Arabians, at least 12 of them, were directly related to James Baker, George H.W. Bush, Mueller, John Brennan? They're all one. They were all part of it. Now, we can go into great detail about why it happened, but that doesn't matter. For Lindsey Graham to say it's going to happen again because of the myth that 9/11 came out of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan is insane. And then they said, oh, now we're going to go after Iraq because Al-Qaeda is in Iraq. Al-Qaeda was never in Iraq. Al-Qaeda was never in Iraq. As a matter of fact, Al-Qaeda, when it left Afghanistan and asked for fighters to come to Syria, it was Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, who funded them, gave them weapons, and changed their name from Al-Qaeda to ISIS or ISIL and sent them into Iraq. That's the only Al-Qaeda that ever was in Iraq. But yet we bombed Iraq because supposedly they were responsible. Al-Qaeda in Iraq, Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, responsible for 9/11 working out of Iraq. Insane. Weapons of mass destruction, the lies, the yellow cake. Who was that? That was Robert Mueller. That was James Comey. That was John Brennan. These are all the same exact actors, and we need to have them sign a document.
No, we don't. We need to arrest them and put them away. They are enemies of the United States.
The point is once they sign that oath, then we charge them with making fraudulent statements, and we arrest them for treason, for sedition, because that's what this is. We don't have any idea who's coming across our southern border, but I can tell you some of them. First off, you got communists, Chinese communists. You don't really have that many Russians, but you have some. But you have a massive amount of Chinese communism. You have Venezuelan communism. you have Cuban communism, you have Hezbollah, Hamas, you have literally now some ISIS, you literally have new groups of Al-Qaeda infiltrating these caravans. These are enemies. Guaranteed, they are bringing weapons across the border. Weapons of drugs that can kill you with one pill, weapons of human trafficking, weapons of destroying our country because of the blatant sedition, treason, war actors attacking America. Every single person that will not sign an oath saying that you support the president's duty, his right to secure our southern border from weapons of mass destruction, from human trafficking, from fake asylum seekers, from basically an invasion of our worst enemies, just like in Europe, just like George Soros and Angela Merkel did in Europe. That's what's happening here. So Mitch McConnell, you are George Soros and Angela Merkel in one. And if you don't understand that, we need to prosecute you. Because if you won't support the president simply carrying out the laws of this land, then there is no reason that you should hold political office. As a matter of fact, you are working against the president, and you will be personally responsible for those weapons of mass destruction that are coming across the border. That's the reason Trump, as another Christmas present to us, said, I'm creating a new focus. Biological weapons, weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, nuclear, all of the weapons of mass destruction, number one issue in America. And where is our most volatile and most vulnerable point? Our southern border. We are inviting that into our country. Not only lawlessness, not only criminality, but John Roberts, how dare you support a liberal California judge saying that we need to go back and get the fake asylum seekers who came into this country and we sent back. We're going to go get them and bring them back and pay for them to come back here. John Roberts, you have no right to say that. You are a criminal. You are a war actor. And you are basically, let's call it what it is. I think Candace Owens said it very nicely the other day. We need to stop calling them liberals and calling them what they are. These are communists working against America. These are war actors. These are enemies. These are people who are described in the U.S. Patriot Act that we're supposed to be going after, but we haven't gone after any of them. Robert Mueller, James Comey never closed down 10,000 separate sleeper cells in America from one day to the next. We have hackers who went in and closed down 10,000 Islamic radical terrorist sites in one day. Oh, but John Brennan couldn't do that. As a matter of fact, let's remember what John Brennan did. John Brennan was not only a radicalized Muslim who literally did his prayer and had his prayer rug in his office and did his prayers in his office and refused to take his oath of office on a Bible, refused to take his oath of office on the Constitution or anything else. He chose parts that he would then swear his oath to. And what did he do? The first thing he did, he was in charge of the CIA terrorist division, the first person appointed to that. And what was his first deed? Is to state there is no such thing as Islamic fascism. There is no such thing as radical Islamic fascists. He literally wrote it out of the book. So you couldn't even be charged with it because it didn't exist. Same thing happened with Mueller. Same thing happened with Comey. They downgraded terrorism to the point that you might as well just be a citizen of the United States of America if you're a terrorist. Hey, come on in. Come across the southern border. Invade us. We're going to give you jobs. For instance, John Kerry. John Kerry gave 2,500 high-placed positions to Iranians as part of the Iranian bad Obama deal. And now we're finding out that dozens of them have now been arrested for being spies. John Kerry, you go to jail. Because why? You also receive money into the table for the Iranian deal. You also receive money from Ukraine for your son, China. You are a bad actor. And these are not patriots. These are not Americans. And these people simply need to be charged with their crimes. And it would be as simple as stating, do you support this? And if they say they do, and then they vote against it, or they speak against it, then they're simply criminals. And if they can't vote for a secure southern border, then they don't need to be in the Senate. And we're going to see this happen. The separation of the wheat from the chaff is happening as we speak in the court of public opinion.
Well, let me sum up what I see. We have a president now that's pulling us out of 3 wars: the Korean War, the Afghanistan War, the Syrian War. And with the Farm Bill, he's lifted the restrictions on hemp. And to top it off, if that isn't enough, tell the folks what's just happened with Tibet.
Well, also, I want to point out what you just said. Allowing hemp to be legal, it's still going to be very controlled. It has to be, 0.03% possible CBDs inside of hemp.
But you can use it for fuel, you can use it for clothing. There's just so many ways you can use it other than smoking it.
Tobacco kills, hemp heals. Allowing hemp is going to create one of the biggest boosts in our economy in U.S. history. Why did we not allow hemp before? Because of the tobacco companies want to kill you. Remember, there is a program of eugenics going on from the pharmaceutical companies, the tobacco companies, the drug companies, Chinese drugs, and American drugs flying under the false flag of Chinese pharmaceutical drugs. What was all that about? Well, we know what was it about. It was to kill Americans. If anyone who smokes cigarettes at this point, the only reason you smoke is probably because you've rewired your brain to believe that tobacco is not poisonous. And subconsciously, they have brainwashed all of us to think that hemp and marijuana is bad, when it is, in fact, one of the greatest healing substances on the earth. It's going to create one of the biggest boosts for industry in U.S. history, and hopefully it will put to rest the death weed called tobacco. And notice most of those tobacco companies, where did they move? They moved to Britain so that they wouldn't be charged anymore with fines from America. Isn't that nice? So the major tobacco companies are now owned by British companies, and we can't do anything about it because they're a corporation that's outside of America. Wrong. When someone produces fentanyl and one pill can kill you, whoever produced it needs to go to jail, because that is a weapon of mass destruction. Tobacco is a weapon of mass destruction.
Okay, I know how you feel about tobacco. Can we back up and talk about the good news about Tibet?
Trump just signed an executive order, which is absolutely beautiful. And to me, it's specifically beautiful because the Dalai Lama is a friend of mine, and I've had many, many, many conversations about how many people the Chinese have killed, how many Tibetans the Chinese have killed. Now, they put a high-speed train going to Lhasa, to Potala Palace, as a Disney World experience, okay? As they were actively burning almost every monastery that wasn't turned into a Disney World trip. So, what did Trump say? He says, oh, no. Tough luck, China. Now, let me explain this first before I say this. The one belt, one road, one China, one unified China is the biggest lie in human history. No. China does not own Taiwan. China does not own Tibet. China is trying to steal Ladakh and Bhutan and parts of India, as well as they're basically going to take over the North Korean manufacturing as simply an extension of themselves. And remember, North Korea has never been anything more than the megaphone of China. So Tibet was just allowed. The most amazing thing. I would tell you how many Tibetans have been murdered, but you wouldn't believe me. Let's just say millions and millions and millions, ruthlessly murdered, monasteries burnt down, and monks just taken out and shot. Okay? Now, Tibetans have not been able to go back to visit their own country since they left in exile many years ago, including the Dalai Lama. Now it is legal. And basically Trump is saying, tough luck, China. You don't own Tibet, and I'm going to let anybody go back to Tibet that wants to go back to Tibet, and you are going to stop manipulating Tibet, and you are not going to take over its mineral rights because they have a lot of rare earth minerals there, and you're just not going to do it. And we're also not going to recognize that you say Taiwan is yours. So basically Trump is in, as we told you, the number one war right now is on our southern border. The number two war is with China. It is not with Russia. Never has been. And we're going to go into that real soon with Michael McKibben, and we're going to reveal some things to you that are probably going to shock you. But we need to reveal these because Trump is basically bringing all these things to light. So as Santa Trump is putting people on the naughty list and the nice list, you can bet your bottom dollar that every single military general, every single company that makes money from the military-industrial complex from war by being a banker and broker to both sides and basically playing both sides against each other, that's what's going on all over the world. That's why we have troops in over 100 different countries. They're protecting American corporations, and the rogue CIA is basically fomenting dissent so we can send in our troops, so we can say we're protecting these corporations. No, those corporations cannot any longer be protected by America. We have to consider those corporations to be war actors working against America. This is sedition, this is treason, and corporations are selling out America. So I like the fact that as we are approaching Christmas, Trump has all the cards. Mitch McConnell, you can play your game, but if you play this game, you're not going to get reelected, and neither are any of the Republicans who are not MAGA, who do not believe in a strong southern border and stopping the insanity of the invasion of America by our worst enemies under the auspices of a General Kelly or a Kirsten Nielsen saying, oh, no, it's okay. It is not okay, folks. We need a secure homeland border, and we are pulling our troops back so that they can protect our own southern border and so that we can go in a direct war economically with China. And by the way, we are smashing China in that war. So, sorry, China, you don't get any presents for Christmas. There's no presents under the tree for you. So, Santa Trump, thank you. Thank you to all your elves, and thank you for delivering coal and sticks to those enemies of America, those communists of America, the Russian, Chinese communists who are taking over America and have taken over the Senate. And Mitch McConnell, you are a Chinese communist. What isn't perfectly clear about that? If you do not support a strong southern border, you are basically 100% endorsing an invasion of America.